Welcome to the College Football Show on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sport 24/7, 365. They finally let the patients run the asylum. We've got Nate, No Remorse Sports here, and Spinksy, and we'll be covering the college football draft, college football season, actually, as we go forward. But this week, we'll be talking about the NFL draft. I just need to address a few things first. I've had to move into my home office this morning. I would usually be set up somewhere else. And yes, there is a massage table here in the background. No, I do not expect Robert Kraft to walk through that door, but stranger things have happened. So, welcome to my co-host, Nate. Nate, tell the people all about yourself and where they can find you.
Well, Spinksy, you could find me at No Remorse Sports. There's no spaces involved. Do not make that goddamn mistake. There's no spaces. Anyway, I'm going to be doing a lot of different content, whether it's football, whether it's MMA, whether it's boxing, whether it's basketball. I run the gambit of things. Anyways, back to you, my favorite Louisiana native, Spinksy.
As you all might know, it's 8 a.m. over here in Australia, and it is Sunday morning, and it is Mother's Day. So I'd like to thank my mum for bringing me into this world, all the awesomeness that I am. So thank you, Mum, and to all the other mums out there, happy Mother's Day. And we are almost set to go with UFC 249. So in about an hour or so, UFC will start. So after you're done with this show, find your local streaming service or ESPN or whoever's showing it and watch some UFC, which will be the first live spot we've had for a very, very long time. So very excited about that. But obviously watch this show first. Just yeah. This week we're going to talk about the NFL draft as such, focusing on my favorite team, obviously LSU. But we'll get to that soon. But as the season goes on, we're going to keep this sort of time slot each week. We're going to be talking about spring training coming up hopefully soon. If all you guys can stay home, we'll have some games coming up soon. Maybe we'll see. How teams are going through spring training without being able to sort of get together. Maybe some overs and unders on games won this year. We're looking at 2021 drafts. There's a lot that we can sort of talk about going forward. But look, I'd like to start, Nate, with you. What were a few takeaways you had from the draft itself? I know we're so used to seeing the last couple of years having 100,000 people on the street, and this year was sort of all gone from home. But what were a few things that really jumped out to you?
The SEC dominates as always. I mean, I think it's been the last 14 years in a row. It's some crazy statistic like that. The last 14 years, the SEC has had the most players drafted into the NFL. How there's still a debate places that the SEC isn't the best conference in America is absolutely ridiculous. They prove it year in and year out. Obviously, your favorite team, LSU, dominated once again. And wow, I mean, it's clearly the best conference in the NFL. I mean, in college sports, and they're going to probably do it again if we have a season next year. They're the top teams like Alabama, LSU are still have a great underclassmen. I mean, you look at the guy who started for your team last year, Derek Stingley Jr. I mean, he was starting at one of the places they call DBU as a freshman.
Yeah. There's a lot of talent, obviously, in the SEC. It's probably one of the hardest divisions as well because you've got so many awesome teams. It's not like your Clemson's and stuff like that who just dominate their division every year. So I think having teams like Georgia, LSU, Alabama, to a certain extent, Texas A&M, stuff like that, they've over the years the quality is just getting better and better. And so I think maybe we can talk about this down the track, but going from 4 teams to maybe 8 would help the SEC because I think most years the team who finishes third out of the SEC potentially could be in that top 4, but still sort of misses out. So I think the SEC is a massive conference, and I think they don't get as much credit as they should. So, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you talk about that. You talk about programs like Tennessee. Tennessee is a top flight program, but we just don't remember that since they haven't dominated like they did almost 20 years ago. Yeah. But still, that's a 5-star program, and they still get major recruits. But I mean, they're just, let's put it this way: if we put a program like Tennessee in the Pac-12, things look completely different.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I think one of the stats I saw earlier in the week was Alabama had 3 guys drafted in the top 50, which is the 11th year straight they've had that. And so that's just, I think that's since Nick Saban turned up there, and that's just the program and the way they work it there is just so amazing that they just it's not like your football team that has one awesome season. They're just year after year after year after year. It's great. Yeah, it's good. So
Yeah, those Nick Saban. I mean, that's just since he's taken over Alabama, they're just a completely different program. And if you look at the funny thing is, people forget he won a national championship at LSU years ago. So I mean, it's every year he solidifies himself as being the college football GOAT of all time, Nick Saban. And not only does he draft just good players, but he teaches them well. He's an excellent teacher. These guys come into the league ready to play. Even if they're not stars, they're smart players. They can plug right. You can plug right in.
You can, yeah. That's what I found too. Like when I chose to be an LSU fan, I wanted an SEC team. So I did heaps of instead of just picking a team out of nowhere. I wanted to do my research and find out. I wanted an SEC team because you get more TV games, but you also get more harder games too. I don't want to support a team that wins every week. I want to support a team that's a good program that's strong, but they also have good games. So being an LSU fan, you get to play Bama every year. You get Georgia every other year. You get Auburn, you get Tennessee, you get Texas A&M. You get those hard games, and that's what I love. And that 7 overtime game with LSU and A&M about 3 years back was unbelievable. It was like 4.5 hours of football, and it was just amazing. And yes, we lost, but I still remember that, and it was great. So,
well, yeah. Let me ask you this: since you guys had one of the best seasons in college football history. Did you watch by chance the 2001 Miami Hurricanes?
Was that I saw the podcast on that during the week. Didn't they? They won the national championship.
Yeah, in my opinion, since I've been watching college football, that is the best team I've ever seen. But now watching this 2019 LSU team, I actually think they could give them a run for their money. Just because if you remember that team with Miami, they had Ken Dorsey, who ended up being drafted in the 7th round.
That's
but
right. Yeah.
You can't compare Ken Dorsey to Joe Burrow.
No. And I think Burrow wasn't as awesome until Joe Brady turned up. And when Brady turned up, the OC from the Saints, they just matched, and it was absolutely perfect. And now Brady's obviously gone, and he's going to be the OC at the Panthers now. So the connection those two had, and the system they ran was just amazing. So I think Burrow mightn't have been as good still, unless he was there. Obviously still good, but obviously no one thought Burrow was going to go over Tua or Herbert at the start of last year, except maybe Burrow's dad, but that was it.
Yeah, right.
Yes. So look, back to the NFL draft. LSU had 14 guys taken overall. They also had another 7 undrafted free agents, including Randy Moss's son Thaddeus, who's an exceptional tight end, and he's been picked up by the Redskins. So hopefully he gets a bit of game time, but maybe not against the Cowboys. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, they had 5 guys go in the first round, which equals the record from Ohio State. This team was just dominant all year. Being an LSU fan, I kind of thought at some stage we're going to hit a wall. I always get scared that would sort of go 6-0, 7-0, and then we come up against Alabama and get beaten, and then you're virtually out. So college during the season, if you lose one game, you're usually done, unless it's a big game. So I was nervous. And then we beat Bama, and then we went on again and again and again, and we just kept winning games. And that's kind of when I realized that this was our year. And go on to win the national championship, and then the team just gets decimated by guys coming into the draft, which is, I suppose, something that Alabama sort of deals with every year. But being an LSU fan, we sort of have a few go each year, but not half our team. And we've actually had half our team go this year. So it'd be very interesting to see how they go their recruiting's looking all right for this year. There's a few solid kids that have stayed, so that'll be handy. But there's also a lot of talent in the NFL now, and I'm really happy with that. So having Burrow go number 1 overall, we had 5 in the first round. They had a long snapper drafted. Miami drafted the LSU long snapper. When was the last time that happened?
You start the special teams through the long snapper. Come on, man.
That's true, man. That's true. It just seems strange that for so many years, Alabama dominated. They've dominated the SEC. We've had Georgia there or thereabouts, and then LSU, who just comes out and has the best season that we've ever seen. And now we're probably going to go back to being the second or third team again. So I think it'll be a few years before we come back to this good, but this might be something that we never see again. So,
yeah, well, it's interesting. You brought up Thaddeus Moss. Do you think it was a mistake for him to come out early?
I think so. Yeah, there was a lot of hype around him. He could have probably stayed another year, but it's hard to say because if you stay another year and the new quarterback and you don't connect, then he could be on the outer. So say he was going to be a 3rd round pick this year. Obviously he wasn't, but he could have gone undrafted next year too. So I understand they want to come out because he had a good season, and you can't really it's hard to say because you come out now, you don't get drafted, you can't go back. So he's made the choice to come out, and hopefully with the Redskins, they use him for something. I really like Thaddeus. He's tall. He's fast. He moves well. It was probably a mistake, I think.
Yeah, I felt that way too, because even in Joe Burrow's offense, he was kind of overshadowed by the guys he had on the outside. And obviously they lost Brady to the pros, and they lost Burrow. So it's difficult because I think he was going to be slotted to be like kind of a later round pick to begin with.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We talked about restocking and everything like that. I don't know if you heard, but Tua's brother is entering the transfer portal.
I did see that. Yes, I did see that. Happened yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, something very recent.
Is it Tualia? Did he say it? Tualia Tagovailoa?
Don't ask me, man.
Yeah, I think he's there's talk he might go to Miami. Obviously, Tua's down there. Obviously now after being drafted by the Dolphins, and I think the Hurricanes are looking for a quarterback still because they've kind of had no one for years. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens down there. So, but yes, big fan of him. LSU's quarterback this year's name escapes me off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but the kid's teams are right. He had a bit of time with them during last season. Came on a bit when we were up by 50 in games. So I think he's got a bit of skill to him. There's also a few good kids in the transfer portal too. So it'd be very interesting to see how they go. It's going to be hard because you can't really get together. So it's not like you can just get guys to come in for workouts and tryouts and stuff because obviously with the virus going on. So I think that's what keeps players like Cam Newton out of the system so much because Cam's probably the best quarterback out there, not on a team, but he can't actually get into anywhere to be sort of tested. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I think LSU are going to do okay this year, but I don't think that there's no way they're going back to back.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's going to be interesting to see who Bama has at quarterback right now because it was kind of, I guarantee you the thought process when the Tagovailoas went to Alabama, they thought once Tua went pro that he was going to transfer over and then the younger brother was then going to be and it's going to be interesting because not only is the younger brother going to transfer, but I'm curious to see if the father still has the same access to the program that he did at Alabama, because Tua's dad, when at Alabama, had a key to the office and key to the door and everything. So he had unchartered access to everything. Whereas if he goes somewhere, I wonder if that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I suppose, because he's sort of come on now, isn't he? Not with two. So, yes. Look, I'm sure whoever Bama chooses, they'll be up there anyway. I can't see I can't see Clemson having a down year. They've got Trevor Lawrence there still. Um, they're going to be tough to beat, and so will Bama, and so will Georgia with their new quarterback Jamie Newman. So there's a lot of talent around, and I just can't see that being LSU again this year. Like I love Coach O, guy's awesome. The voice when he talks, I just want to kiss him. I love him, but yeah, I can't see. I see why he's such a good talker and a good promoter, and the game loves him, and the people of Louisiana have to build him a statue somewhere. It's great, but yeah, I just can't see us doing as well as we have done. So,
yeah, dude's like a character out of the movie The Waterboy. I mean, the guy is just like a fictional character made real, but he's awesome. And another thing about him that made me respect him a little more, traditionally, he's just kind of a heavy package kind of a guy, insert joke there, but heavy package, run the ball right up the gut. I mean, not a lot of spreading it out, but he hired Joe Brady, and it kind of went to the antithesis of what he believes as a football coach. So props to him for being able to change.
Yeah, because I did some research on him after he was hired, and he was a strength and conditioning coach at UCLA, and he applied for the top job at UCLA, but because of the way he speaks, they were like, "Oh, our program's a bit more upmarket, and the people won't actually understand you," so they rejected him. Yeah, so UCLA could have had him as their coach. So then he goes back to the Bayou and comes home with a national championship. So it's great.
Yeah, and then also he was briefly USC's head coach. He was their interim coach.
Yeah.
So they turned him away too, but I don't know how that would have worked with kind of California players and kind of the culture kind of in that area. But, I think he's a guy who could just relate to just about anybody. So I think he's just one of those guys.
Yeah, there was a story going around when he was at USC that during the off season he got the guys back in for spring workouts for the first time, and virtually said to them, "I'm a 60-year-old man. If I can outrun you, lift you, outpace you in anything, you are gone. See you later." And so he'd be out there with him, working his ass off all day, and if he beat you, see you later. You're gone. So
that's awesome.
Good man.
Well, it's interesting because we talked about different teams and how they were kind of dismantled by the draft. Another team that I thought was really good that didn't get a whole lot of love is Utah, particularly on defense. They absolutely got cut to the nubbins.
Yeah, there's a few teams like that. I think Georgia this year they lost a few really good guys up front, and so did Texas A&M and Auburn too. Auburn lost both their guards and a tackle. So trying to replace guys like that who protected your quarterback for the last 3 years is going to be tough. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding going on this off season. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how teams go. Obviously, we're hoping to get a season starting again sometime soon, because usually they'd be coming back for spring training really soon, wouldn't they?
Oh man, I just want college sports to be back. I mean, it would give me the giant red rocket to think about. Or I'm not so certain about the giant part, but you get the drift that if college sports came back.
Yeah. Look, how do you feel if they sort of come back with no fans at all? Like, are you happy to just see sports without fans, or is that weird?
No, I'd be down to see it without fans. It beats no product at all. But particularly with college sports, that's where they separate themselves from pro sports. Is basically there's a much tighter knit community amongst alumni and the student body than there are just fans of professional teams. I mean, if you went to a school, graduated from there, that's with you for life.
Yeah.
And you just don't feel that deep a connection with pro sports. So I think it would really be missing something, even though I'd prefer no product. I mean, I'd prefer a product as opposed to no product, but I think no one would miss the fans more than college sports.
I think the exact same way, to be honest with you. Look, It was hard to watch the wrestling a couple of weeks back with no fans there. That was cringeworthy. But our rugby league over here in Australia is starting again in 18 days on the 28th of May, and there'll be no fans there. And the first couple of rounds this year back in March, they had no fans there, and it was okay. It wasn't so bad. You could hear a lot of the talking on the field, and you were sort of understanding a bit more of the game, which was nice. But as you said, I'd still take sport with no fans over no sport, right? But college is such an atmosphere. Like, I've been to English Premier League games, and they're nuts over there. But the college fans are just the singing and the dancing and the cheering and the signs and the flags and the way it all goes and the bands and the ceremony. It's a full day of entertainment and action and fun, and they're just nuts. They love it.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, without that, I'm going to park out in the front of my lawn, and I'm going to be pre-drinking from Thursday on during college football, whether there's no product at all. And I'm just going to be obliterated drunk by Saturday, whether there's no product at all in memory.
That's exactly right. Very nice, man. Yeah. Yeah. But that was one of those things that made me sort of fall in love with the game. The first couple of times I watched it, I was just like, this band just doesn't stop. Like, the band's huge and just keeps on going and going. It was great. It's part of the atmosphere of being there. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you look at, for instance, like every school has their fight song. Right. And you go to pro sports, particularly football. I mean, how many pro teams have a fight song? Maybe like a couple. I mean, you have the abysmal "Hail to the Redskins." It should be called "Fail to the Redskins." And then you have "Fly Eagles Fly," which is basically spells out the name because it shows you that the fans are actually hooked on phonics.
Yeah.
And need reading rainbow to be able to spell out eagle. So, I mean, at least college sports has the tradition of a decent fight song, where the NFL absolutely butchers it. And then you don't see that, obviously, in the NBA at all. You don't see it amongst other pro sports.
Yeah, I found one of the worst ones was the New York Jets, Jets, Jets.
Yeah.
What is that? It's terrible. But yes, the college fans are something else. So I'd still like to see the game back without fans, but I'd much rather have the fans there. So hopefully you guys in the US can be staying home, looking after yourselves, and we can get some sport back on soon. We're going to get a taste of it in the next hour with UFC. It'll be really nice to watch some people beat the crap out of each other. So
yeah.
It'd be good. But look, Nate, how'd you feel about having the draft at home? I know we sort of touched on it earlier, but I was sort of fascinated with I know I'm sitting here with like a massage table, but some of the spots that the coaches were sitting in and the owners and stuff, and I think it was more personable. Like, you got to sort of see them at home instead of just like in the office with everyone else there, and you get to see their dogs and their family, and it was a lot more of a personal touch. I liked it. It was good.
Yeah, me too. I felt the exact same way, though I was nervous when Bill Belichick had his dog, because I always thought Bill Belichick was the evil emperor. And I'm like, is Bill Belichick going to sacrifice this dog to the gods or something? And then he's going to come up with the draft pick in his name, you know? But thank God that didn't happen. And then you had the image of, in Mike Vrabel's home, you had the dude in the background taking a steaming shit in the back, you know?
What's going on there? There was one stage when there was a guy behind him wearing like the onesie.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. So, I mean, I personally liked it. And so I like the human element of everything. And it was nice to know Bill Belichick likes dogs. And, you know, you could shit freely in the Vrabel home.
You get it, exactly right. And I thought maybe I still missed that like 100,000 fans in the streets of, like, was it Nashville that year? That was awesome. So maybe going forward, they can have the first round live somewhere like that, and maybe the second and third rounds at home. Just sort of keep both things going. So you can sort of see the commissioner sort of got more relaxed as the time went on. first round he was up talking, and then afterwards he was sort of sitting back in his chair.
Yeah.
All kinds of relaxed.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because I think that would be a good idea because day one, those are when usually the people are invited to the kind of the red carpet premiere and everything. So you give the players that element, and so where they're able to experience the draft and celebrate their accomplishment. And then the rest of the days, it's kind of like, okay, we get to get more personal here and see a little bit more.
Yeah. There was a few strange things. Even in the 5th and 6th and 7th round, every time you got picked, so and so out of LSU has gone to the Dolphins. He sticks on his hat. I'm like, how the hell have you got a hat?
Yeah, right.
You send out 32 hats to everyone. Like,
yeah.
You know you're going to get hats.
Then you have to return them if you don't get selected, which costs the postal stamp, you know.
Yeah. And one thing I really didn't like was everyone had a sob story. And I understand some people have gone through heartache in their time, but I thought it was very unfair for ESPN or NFL Network to bring up everything that had happened in their life. Their mum had died, their uncle had cancer, or whatever. There always seemed to be one really, really bad note. And I thought that was a bit distasteful.
Yeah, well, it was almost weird because it almost seemed like they were almost competing with each other. I mean, not the players themselves, but it seemed like they're comparing these horrible tragedies to another one. And then you maybe get that one player in between that's kind of like, of course, they'll never say anything good. They'll be like, oh, he came from a wonderful family with both parents are doctors. And it's just like they're never going to say anything like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very loving parents and very loving family who had supported his endeavors in sports his entire life. You know, anything like that.
No, there was always that sub story, and I didn't. Yeah, I understand people go through things in their time, but yeah, some of that should be kept probably private more than getting posted across the world. So.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well because here we are, we're going to drop these horrible tragedies in these players' lives. If they have off the field problems, the media is going to leak it. And then there was a few times I read amongst journalists that they were iffy about releasing players' Wonderlic scores because they thought that was getting too personal. But here we are, we're gonna leak the fact that you failed the drug test, and we're gonna leak the fact that you punched someone at a bar a few years ago, or you had an attitude with the coaches, but that's not off limits, but your test score is.
Exactly. There always seems to be something on the night before. Was it a couple of years back? Old mate got caught smoking weed through the mask.
Oh yeah. That was Laremy Tunsil.
And he just dropped and dropped. Didn't he? It just seems every year there's something else. It's good.
Well, that got leaked the day of the draft. That's the funniest part. So God bless that man. He just got a fat contract from the Texans, and he got a 3-year deal. So that means he could be re-up in that amount of time.
Yeah, sure. And they're not going to test. They're not going to test it in 2020, are they? For weed, there's no more testing, so that's good.
Yeah, which is interesting because you saw a player like Zach Bond drop into the 3rd round because he had a diluted sample, not even a failed sample, but a diluted sample.
Diluted samples are always strange, though. Like, have you really drunk 15 liters of water, or are you trying to hide something? Usually, you're trying to hide something. So, it just seems weird that you have a diluted sample before your draft test. Everyone's had a diluted sample, but they're trying to hide something.
Yeah, and then there's also the theory that they want to weigh in heavier because more water weight, and then it'll increase their weight, and they'll be like, oh, so you're 255, you're actually 247. You know, like we originally thought you were. So,
yeah. Look, there was a stat I saw earlier in the week, and I love stats. I'm a big stats guy. Stats can explain anything, right? There was 255 kids who went to the combine, and 254 kids were drafted. There was one kid who went to the combine who was not drafted, and that was Shea Patterson, the quarterback out of Michigan, who I've been saying has been trash for about 3 years, and I was right. And then he got picked up by the Chiefs during the week.
Yeah, well, if you had to get picked up somewhere, you'd want to get picked up by the Chiefs. I mean,
sure.
well, actually, they have a fairly full quarterback room at the moment. Obviously, Mahomes, and then they picked up the guy from the XFL, Jordan Teamu, who I actually think was a great spot for him to land. You know, and now they got. I've never been a fan of Shea Patterson. I didn't think he was even the best quarterback on his own team.
Yeah. I wrote an article about him probably 2 years back. He was fighting for the starting job there, and I'm like, he is not that good. And they gave him a starting job, and I laughed, and they were shit.
Yeah, well, it's actually he was starting over McCaffrey, who is Christian McCaffrey's brother.
Yeah.
So that's just amazing genetics there, and I think they have a younger brother who's also playing Division I football. So,
Nice.
God bless Ed McCaffrey.
There's a lot of talent around, isn't there? Yeah. So really nice. But look, we're going to sort of talk about what's coming up on the show next. During the season, we'll probably keep this time slot. I want us to sort of touch on the name, image, and likeness laws that have sort of come in. So I believe Florida was talking about it first, and then California came in with it too. And it looks like the NCAA has now reacted again to it. So it looks like they're going to be changing the law going forward about college kids making some money, which will be nice. We're going to talk more about spring training as we go forward. We're going to do overs and unders on teams. We're going to talk about recruits. We're going to talk about the transfer portal, teams we think will improve in 2020, sorry. And if we're going to have a season at all. So be very interesting to see how things go the next couple of weeks. I think a few sports opening up here and there will be handy. So it'd be really nice if we actually had a season going forward. So Nate, what else will you bring to the show, mate? What are we going to talk about?
You know what? I'm really curious, and you saw a lot of NFL players debating this. If you had to assemble an all-state team, basically, from high school, where they went to high school counts as where they see, what state do you think wins it all? Because you saw players from Georgia arguing that they would assemble the best team. You saw Texas, you saw Florida.
Yes.
So do you have a take on that? What squad do you think would lead the way?
I saw a stat where most 5-star recruits come out of California. So I think California and I think Florida was the other one. So I'd be very interested to see those two schools. I think they sort of can't keep them. Their college programs at the moment are fairly ordinary, but I think high school football, some of the best is obviously Florida, California, and Texas. So I'd like to see that as a showdown. Can we do that? Like, can we organize this?
Yeah, no, that'd be amazing because they're actually into this shit. They're the ones saying like, nah, like I'm from Georgia, I'm from Texas, like that's who I represent. If you're instead of the Pro Bowl, I would be, or even let's say if we don't have any real games next year, let's say worst case scenario, I would be okay with doing like assembling some sort of an all-state team.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. That'd be awesome because the week of the Pro Bowl it tends to be a bit ordinary. You got your skills game, you got this, you got that, and all that stuff works, but your Pro Bowl itself is like 66 to 64, and it's just there is no defense at all. There's no need to have a defense. You might as well have offense against offense. So why not during that week combine the combine maybe, or get high school kids in and have your high school games and watch like the future talent. Right.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And these players are into it. I mean, they're invested in this argument. They truly believe. Like I saw like a good number of players from Georgia that were just saying like, no one from Texas is going to stop me. And then you saw Patrick Mahomes chime in and be like, well, no, I'm just going to bomb on anyone from Georgia. Yeah. So it's kind of like, particularly in the Bible Belt here, you saw a lot of the players like with a lot of pride, or just you don't even have to play the rest of Florida. You could just take the players just coming out of Miami, the Miami district, or even the Houston, Texas. So it's like you can get you could either do state boundaries, or we could even have like a representation of like cities. I mean, let's say if you had Houston versus Miami, just based off of the prospects who have come out of that area, man, you're watching probably some of the best football there is.
So what I don't actually, I've covered some high school games and a few kids, but do you stay in your like state? So each city's in their state, and then you're in your state championship. Then do you go on further, or is that it?
Now you win the state championship, you've won it all. So
Not at all. There's no like state against state.
I think they do that like very frequently. There was a school maybe about an hour from where I'm from originally, named De La Salle. And they won something like a ridiculous amount of games, and they won something like 200 games in a row.
Yeah, nice.
And they would just beat the shit out of anyone they'd play. And there'd be some times where they'd play games with other people across in different states, but it also has to do with the size of the school. So if you're in like a Division II school, it has to do with you're not going to play a team that's Division V because just of the size of the school.
Yeah. I remember seeing there was a high school in Texas, or it might have been it was a high school in Texas, and they've spent $75 million on their stadium. And I'm like,
I believe it.
That's a high school. We got like a field, and we use our rugby league, our AFL, our cricket all in the same field.
Yeah, I mean that's religion over there. I mean, you even look at the even the show or the movie Friday Night Lights. I mean, it's based off of the obsession of that area in the world. And this isn't necessarily like a populated part of the country. It's in Western Texas.
Like you said, it's you got your Friday nights, your high school games, your Saturdays, your college games, and your NFLs on your Sunday. Whole weekend, man. It's good. It's the perfect weekend.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on? You probably know the answer to this. Is there a team that actually took the most amount of players in the SEC or the LSU players?
I do know that. Yes, I do know that. LSU had 14 taken across the 7 rounds, and the SEC had 63 in total. So the SEC had 63, which was one shy of the record. So the record was SEC set last year was 64. So having 63 guys go out of 255, that's insane. The Big Ten had 48, which is not too bad. Pac-12 had 32 get drafted, which is very impressive. And the Big 12 only had 21, which is fairly ordinary, to be honest. They've really sort of struggled the last couple of years to have guys really drafted. The competition in the Big 12 seems to be getting a bit worse as the years go on. But like as you said, man, the SEC just like dominates every year. It's great.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible because when I was looking for colleges and stuff like that, I put a completely different precedent on if they were good at football or not, because it's just the involvement of the certain area. Football's a religion. So.
Oh, sure is, man. Yeah, and like when I chose LSU, I wasn't sort of thinking about other sports, and then Ben Simmons, the Aussie NBA star, he joined LSU basketball, and I'm like, I want to watch LSU basketball, and they're okay. They were strong, obviously, when he was there, and I think they were. I was doing some research on them the other night. They were looking okay this year. I think they'd made it to March Madness, so that was good. But I think going forward, they'll be stronger next year. They've got a few awesome recruits. So, but it's just I'm not really a big sort of college basketball fan until March Madness comes around. So it's just nice if my team's there. But I was watching like highlights of LSU softball the other day. It was great.
Yeah. No, man, I don't care what you say. You gotta sell, because your average American is not good with accents. So you got to sell yourself as a deep down Louisiana boy.
Yeah.
You're not Australian. You're
How are you?
red-blooded American.
Yeah, catfishing.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Now, did you have an opinion about, because you covered the draft along with us, is there a team out there that you thought absolutely had the best draft?
obviously, between you and I, it's the Cowboys, of course.
CD Lamb, CD Lamb.
Yes. Look, the Cowboys did extremely well. I think I was very skeptical on Mike McCarthy coming on as our coach. I spent a lot of time. I wrote an article. I had the top 10 guys on my list that I wanted to be Cowboys coach. I had Matt Rule. I had Joe Brady. I had heaps of different names. I had all these names, and ninth on my list with a score of 2 out of 10 was McCarthy. So
Yeah.
I'll admit I was wrong. Obviously, he hasn't coached any actual games yet for us, but his draft was sensational. And I think usually in the back in the day, if the Cowboys had their list, they would stick to whoever was on their list, even if they reached. But the fact that CD Lamb fell to them and they could just take him, instead of just sticking with what they knew, that's the kind of guy you want. And I know that's the easy option, but having him now, I think he's got a bit more sense and a bit more calm now. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously love what the Cowboys did, but I just love the general draft philosophy that you're going to get is it's not about X's and O's, it's about Jimmys and Joes. Essentially, that you're drafting the best player and you're getting the player and you're going to fit your scheme around what they do well. It's not going to be, do they fit into our scheme?
yeah, and so and with that in mind, I think the teams like the Panthers did well. Panthers have obviously got Matt Rule and Joe Brady there now. They've got a whole new setup. Riverboat Ron has gone to the Redskins. The Panthers did well. Most of the teams in the NFC East actually did well. I think the Giants drafted fairly. The Redskins were good. I think Ron's done well there with his first draft. I think he's really trying to change the culture with the Redskins. And then we have the Eagles, who drafted a player, which is nice of them. So thank you to the Eagles. But yeah,
Well,
I think, yeah.
I'm sorry, man, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. I really think the NFC East going forward is going to be strong as, man. I think heaps of offense this year, and there'll be a lot of good touchdowns.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you look at what the Eagles did, particularly on offense. They went after team speed, definitely wanted to get quicker on the outside. And then you look at the Cowboys, conversely, and you see that they want to get big and physical in the secondary, particularly at cornerback. So it's going to be interesting to see how those ultimately come together, the big physical corners versus the lightning quick receivers.
I think the same with the Dolphins too. The Dolphins already had they picked up Byron Jones, a cornerback from the Cowboys, and they're already paying Xavier Howard. So I think they've got the two most expensive cornerbacks in the game. And then they drafted a safety too out of LSU. Was it Delpit? I think maybe.
But Delpit went to the Browns, and then they got the corner from, I'm not going to pronounce his name, but he has a Nigerian name, I believe. And that's
yes, yeah, that guy, yeah, Noah, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Noah. We'll call it good.
No, good, but Noah, yeah. So I think the Dolphins secondary is going to be freaking awesome this year. I think having the Patriots without Brady, I think that really opens up that division. The Bills and the Dolphins, obviously going forward, I think they'll be a lot stronger for it.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we look at someone like Joe Burrow, who was drafted first overall, who dominated his competition in the highest of the highs you could possibly have in college football. And then you look at Josh Allen, who was drafted by the Bills in the top 10, who really didn't dominate, even though he had the elite traits at the small school level. So for my money, I want someone who dominated. If you have elite traits, you dominate.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what it's hard because being a number one quarterback overall, you get taken. You tend to be going to a team that is ordinary, and so the protection in front of you is going to be rubbish. Your receivers are rubbish. So it's not often that you get thrown in as a number 1 overall pick and you turn out to be awesome. It tends to be those guys who sort of get to sit to wait. So you guys who are drafted in the 3rd or 4th round or whatever, your Aaron Rodgers, your Tom Brady's, guys who get to sit there and wait first, rather than your Johnny Manziel's who get thrown in there first and turn out to be shit. Your Baker Mayfields, stuff like that. I know the jury's out on Baker still, but maybe the Bengals should have kept Dalton and let Burrow sit for 6 months, but only time will tell, I suppose.
You know what I was really hoping Andy Dalton did, and I was been begging for this ever since he was drafted by the Bengals. He needed, because his hair was so close to matching his helmet, he needed to do the Bengal stripes, just like take black spray paint and go. He needed to do that, but now it's all over.
I was a big fan of talking about quarterbacks. Big fan of Hawaii quarterback Cole McDonald, blonde dreadlocks. He spent 3 years with Hawaii down there, and because they were always the late game, he was always on TV. So I'd get him about 4 o'clock in the afternoon over here on a Saturday night. It was perfect, and so I watched heaps of him, and the guy could throw for 6,000 yards in a season and throw for 40 touchdowns, but also 120 picks. So you kind of took the good with the bad. And he went as I think he went as a UDFA to the Titans. I think he was picked in the 7th round by the Titans. So this kid could be anything. I've seen him do some incredible things and then do some Dak Prescott things too. So let's see him start.
Yeah, it's interesting because Hawaii traditionally has those quarterbacks. They run the scheme where basically the quarterback's going to throw for a ridiculous amount of yardage and a lot of touchdowns. It was the same thing with Texas Tech for years. So when you had quarterbacks come from those schools, they almost had an asterisk next to their name. I mean, it was the same thing with Patrick Mahomes when he came out. It's kind of like, well, he played at Texas Tech. I mean, how much can you really trust those numbers that they're not just inflated?
Inflated numbers too, yeah. And that's some, like, obviously as an NFL scout, you sort of can pick up those things. So obviously you're feeding that information back to your franchise too. But does scheme affect you in college that you don't have going forward? Like for example, will Joe Burrow be awesome with the Bengals because they run a similar style of offense, or would he have been better going to the Saints where Joe Brady came from? So he already knows that offense.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read I keep saying that when I say that, but I actually say that because I do find it interesting, by the way, God damn it, that the only knock on Joe Burrow is when he throws to the outside the numbers. That's where the only time that that's where he looked human. But throwing in the middle of the field and anywhere else, he lit it up. And the Bengals, I think, were in the top 7 to 10. They were definitely top 10 for sure last year in routes where they threw to the sidelines. So if they want to play to Joe Burrow's strength, don't have him continue to throw to the sidelines. Do what he does well.
Yeah, I think that too. Like, they've got a few speedy receivers on there already, but they picked up T. Higgins in the draft from the wide receiver from Clemson. So I think having that kind of pace and skill there, he runs a nice route too. I think Burrow will be okay, but Burrow spent the last year with 3 or 4 of the best wide receivers in the game, a running back who was exceptional. So if you're in trouble, you don't have to throw it away because you've got so many options around you. Like you could virtually throw it up in the air and you know someone's going to catch it. Whereas I don't think that will happen with the Bengals. I think he needs to sort of rein it in a bit and not be so flashy.
No. Yeah, that makes me wonder, like, what are your opinions on Justin Jefferson? Because he, I think, got a little bit of a raw deal because Jamar Chase blew up so much last year, and he was the one everyone was focusing on. And then Justin Jefferson did primarily the most of his work this last season from the slot.
Yeah, look, in the slot, the guy's awesome. I actually didn't really rate him, to be honest with you. Jamar Chase coming out next year for sure. He will go number 2 overall or number 3 overall. Like he's that good. I Jefferson had 111 receptions for 1,500 yards, and I still thought he was very much overshadowed. I think if Jamar Chase came out this year, he would have gone ahead of him for sure. I'm actually surprised Jefferson went first round. Now he's going to the Vikings. I think they've got themselves a good receiver there, but I had him going in like the third round. To be honest with you, and
Oh wow.
how much do you get drafted higher because you were just on a team who went 16-0 that won the national championship? That was out there in everyone's face. If he had those numbers at a Texas Tech or an Auburn or something like that, would he have still been drafted so high?
Yeah, I mean that's the issue. That how much wasn't he feasting off other people's second or third cornerbacks?
Yes. Yeah, and so like does he? Yeah, because LSU had so many offensive weapons, you can't mark all of them. So, and usually your number one defender is going to take on Jamar Chase because he was that good. So, yeah, as you said, Jefferson is probably having to catch the ball against someone who's not as good, and you just dominate guys like that. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. So, yeah, I don't know whether he was drafted. I think he was drafted too high, but he's going to have to come up against the Packers defense, Lions defense, and the Bears defense. So he's going to struggle there, I'd say. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, it's good that they have another receiver opposite him. They did have Evan Thielen on the other side, so that's a decent 1-2 combo they can have. I'm curious what you think about AJ Terrell going 16 overall, because if Jamar Chase, you talk about him going to number 3 overall, that's the amount of the prison sentence he should have got for the abuse he committed on AJ Terrell during the championship game.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's that fun to watch, Jay. Terrell was awesome. He's been so good for so long, and he copped it, didn't he? He was he looked out of place. He looked scared. He looked nervous. He looked like he was like a 10-year-old against a grown man, and he just fell apart. But I like the pick there. I had him going about 15th overall, so I think that was probably a good pickup. You can't just go off one bad game, but yes, he had a bad game then. Bad game.
Yeah, that's the thing that really, I think a lot of teams made them apprehensive, is just kind of like, man, if he gets toasted by a college sophomore, how is he going to look against Julio Jones?
Yeah.
Well, actually, they're going to be on the same team, but I mean, what's Julio Jones going to do to him in practice? What's Mike Evans going to do to him? What's DJ Moore going to do to him?
That's hard because you come out of a team like Clemson, who they're probably only playing 2-3 hard games every year. Like you come out of a team like LSU or Georgia or Auburn or whatever, and most of your games are hard. So you're competing against the best a week in, week out. You don't have those games where you're playing some Saint Christopher's School of nowhere. All your games are hard. So I think, is it looked upon badly if you're from Clemson, where the one hard game you have, you get absolutely torched? Right.
Yeah, because the ACC is not what it used to be. I mean, you look at the University of Miami, that's a staple school for elite prospects. You look at Florida State, that's another top-of-the-line program that struggled the last few years. And really, I mean, who are you playing against, Duke?
You're playing no one, really. Clemson is virtually the only awesome team in that division. They've got Virginia Tech, maybe.
Virginia Tech used to be a much better school too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the Hurricanes down there, but I think they need to get back some of the old heads, get some of those guys back from like the late 90s, early 2000s, even the early 80s. Get them back in and change the culture. I don't know whether there's too much of a party atmosphere down there, and they're too concerned about going out and going to the strippers or the hookers or whatever. They just seem to be having too much of a good time. So, and like being a Hurricane used to be like a staunch thing, and teams were scared to go down there or scared if they came to you, and now they just seem more of a laughing stock. So
yeah, well, since Nick Saban has been in Alabama, if you look at the teams who have won national championships, not Alabama, they've all had great quarterback play, or almost all of them. I'm in the 90th percentile, whether it was Cam Newton with Auburn, whether it was Jameis Winston with Florida State winning, whether it was they didn't win, but Mariota took them to the national championship game.
Yep.
Yeah, you had all these guys with top of the line quarterbacks, and Joe Burrow last year, top of the line quarterback. Anytime, or it was Trevor Lawrence the year before. If you're going to beat Alabama, you have to have a top of the line quarterback.
Yeah, that's certainly shown. I'm really interested to see Jamie Newman with Georgia this year. The school he left escapes me at the moment. Might have been Utah State, but yeah, he's coming to Georgia. I think the thing Georgia lacked the most was a killer quarterback, and I believe this kid he was a 5-star coming out of college, out of high school, sorry. And I think going forward, him and Georgia are going to connect like that, and they're going to be great. I can see Georgia coming out of their side of their CC, and Alabama obviously out of their side too. So yeah, that'll be good. I think Georgia has been strong the last couple of years. They're in the Final Four there a few years ago. They were close last year, but they got torched by LSU going in the last game. So that didn't help them. But yeah, I think they're starting to look on the up again, Georgia.
Yeah, well, they should have won the national championship a few years ago. If it weren't for Tua coming into the game, they were national champions. And it's funny because they've mishandled kind of their quarterback situation or at least over the course of the years, because a few years ago, Jacob Eason was the future. It started as a freshman. And then you get Jake Fromm coming in and taking his spot. Eason then goes and transfers. And then they have the young kid who his name's escaping me at the moment, that transferred to Ohio State.
Hurts. Jalen Hurts.
No, Ohio State went to Oklahoma, but he was at Georgia originally and is at Ohio State now, the quarterback there.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I just completely forget his name now, but he was at Georgia originally.
Yeah, so they seem to produce a lot of talent. It's just whether they can all be on the field together at the same time. And as you said, they were very unlucky to lose to Bama there 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think trying to keep that going again is good. But yeah. Yes. Well, look, mate, this has been a great first show. Been almost an hour now, and I'm sure everyone wants to get away and start watching WFC. So we're very excited for that and watch some people beat the crap out of each other. So, Nate, tell the people where they can find you on social media.
For the love of God, there's no spaces involved in this. No remorse sports. Follow me.
Very nice. Guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down here somewhere, the like, rate, and review. Leave us a comment, and until next week, hooroo. We out.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Lee to give the signal.
Yeah. Is he alive?
Yeah, hopefully he didn't hang himself during this production or something.
You guys are killing me.
Yeah.
That was good. It was nice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it come up easy just talking sport.
Yeah, exactly. You could go a bunch of different directions, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought, no, we'll just keep doing this each week, and we'll have a